Hi guys, so my name is Yasmin and I'm a tutor here at Tutor Impact, and today we are learning all about reading music. Now you might not know much about music or especially reading the music, but today I'm going to give you a brief introduction into what reading music entails and some of the symbols and words that are used to describe things. So first of all, we are going to look at what is called a stave. So a stave is the 5 horizontal parallel lines that you can see here. Those collectively are referred to as a stave. And this stave is read like a sentence from left to right. So when you're reading music, you will have lots of staves on a page and you read them just as you would a sentence. You read them from left to right and you go down the page. Now you'll see these little dots on this stave and these are called notes. And most of the notes of the music are placed on one of these lines of the stave. They're either on a line or between the lines. And as you can see here, each of these either line or spaces refers to a letter called a note, and that refers to a certain pitch. So if you're playing a flute or piano, the letter C, for example, will sound the same pitch on all of them. And the position you can see for the letter C on here, this signifies that note. So the first C is a low C, and then we also have a middle C, which is an octave higher. So it's the same note, but just 8 notes up. So it's called an octave higher. And in this example here, you can see that all of the notes on this stave are pretty much in the stave. However, with this first C, you can see that an extra ledger line has been added to show that a note is too low to be on the stave. So sometimes when the note is really high or it's really low, that we add in extra ledger lines just to indicate this is either higher or lower than the stave. Now we also have, let me put them in, we have these lines here, which I've added on, and these vertical bar lines divide the stave into short sections, and each of these are called bars. So each of the measures between the lines are called bars. And then the double bar line, which I've included at the end here, is used to mark the end of a larger section of the music, including the very end of the piece. So as you can see, there will be 2 lines, and this indicates that either a section has ended or it indicates that we have reached the end of the piece. So it's a bit like a musical full stop is how I would describe it. So they're the main things that you will see on the stave. We also have what is called the treble clef, which you don't need to worry too much about at the moment, but that is that symbol at the start here, and you will see that at the start of a piece of music. So the main things we looked at here are the notes, which you can see indicated, and as you can see, there are different letters to indicate the different notes, which are the different pitches. We have the bar line, which is the 1 line, and we have the double bar line, which signifies the end of the piece. So we're now going to move on to other features of the stave. So I've taken off those notes we had before, and we've got a different one here. So as you can see, there are a lot more symbols on this stave. So there's many different kinds of symbols that can appear on, above, or below the stave, in addition to the notes and rests on the actual music. Now, we didn't have any rests in the previous section of music, but here you can see a clear rest here. So there's a rest at the start, which just means you just don't make any noise. So if you're playing a piano or you're singing, you just wait that period of time, which is known as rest. So you don't make any sound during that period. So yeah, it stands for a period of silence. Other symbols on this stave, we have the clef symbol again. We also have the key signature and the time signature. So you can see the 4/4 is the time signature. And this tells you important information about notes and measures. So the 4/4 actually means that there are 4 beats in each bar. So you know how before we learned that the bar line indicates a certain section. Well, the 4/4 tells us that there are 4 beats in each bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is what the time signature indicates. You don't need to worry about it too much if you're not performing music. And for the purposes of this lesson, as we're just reading music, we're not going to go into any more detail. Now, there are also symbols that appear either above or below the music, and they tell you how fast it goes, like tempo markings, how loud it can be performed, so dynamic markings, where to go next once you reach the end, so repeats, for example, and they even give you directions how particular notes should be performed, such as accents. And you can see some of these here on the diagram of the music below. So we have the dynamic markings, which you can see, which we'll go into more detail later. So there's the piano symbol here, indicated by the letter P, so that means quiet. And we also have a crescendo, which again we'll speak about later on. As I said, you can also have indications for particular notes. So here we have 2 accents at the end. There is also a tempo marking at the beginning, it says allegro. And we also have the beats there as well. So these are all just indications on how the music should be performed. And we're going to look a bit more in depth about these now. So we're going to start with looking at dynamics. Now, I mentioned this briefly a second ago, but there are markings on the piece which indicate how quiet or loud a piece of music should be played. If there were no dynamics or articulation, then the music would sound really quite different. So the dynamics and articulation can really bring the notes to life on the page. And they are basically alterations in volume of the piece of music. Now here you can see we have 4 different words that can be used to describe the dynamics. So we start with pianissimo, which is very quiet. So if you see this, it indicates that you need to play the piece very quietly. We then have piano, which is a bit louder, but still quite quiet. So pianissimo is probably very soft, very quiet, whereas piano is just more of a quiet sound. Then we have fortissimo, which is very loud. So that's the loudest volume you can have. And then we have forte, which is just generally loud. So forte and piano are probably the most common two. And then pianissimo and fortissimo are reserved for the extra loud sections and for the very quiet sections of the music. Dynamics continued, we also have, so with the previous ones, they're more of a sudden change in volume. We also have some gradual annotations. So the crescendo, which is the first one, which looks a bit like a hairpin, is used to show that the music should gradually get louder. There's also the diminuendo or decrescendo for when it is gradually getting softer. So these can be indicated by the words themselves. So it might say crescendo, or the abbreviation, so CRESC, or dim dot. But also they can be annotated by having one of these hairpin symbols on the piece, which is probably the most common way of doing it. So in terms of what we can see here, you can see that it starts very softly in a piano, and then it gradually crescendos to a forte before decrescendoing back to a piano. So as you can see, it's more of a gradual change rather than the sudden change that is seen in the other by the other words and symbols that are used. Next, we're going to look at articulation. So the main 2 types here are legato and staccato. And these show how smoothly something is played. So legato is actually the Italian word for linked together. And what it means is that the notes should be played smoothly. And notes are joined by these curved lines, which you can see in the piece of music here. So in all of these where there is this line, they're sort of joined up. So it'd be, this one here this one here, this one here, and this one here would be more smooth and joined rather than individually played. We also have staccato, which is the Italian word for detached. It means that the note should be played short and sharp, and it's indicated by vertical strokes, as we saw before, or dots, as we can see in the music here. So this piece of music would sound a bit like da 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 da. That sort of so as you can see the legato there, and then we also have the staccato much sharper. So that's the articulation. Next, we are going to be looking at the tempo. So the tempo is the speed of which the piece is played. And again, this is indicated by a series of directions. And most of these expressions are in fact in Italian as well, so similarly to the articulation words. So we're going to go through some of these Italian words now, just to let you know what they mean. So the first one is largo, so it's slowly and broadly. So it's not too quick, and it's just quite slow and broad. We have andante, which is fairly slow at walking pace. So probably a bit quicker than largo, but still not very quick. We have moderato, which is, as it sounds, moderate, so at a moderate pace. We have allegro, which is fast, really quite playful. And then quicker than that, we have presto, which is very quick. And similarly to how we have the gradual dynamics changes, we also have accelerando and rallentando, which is for gradually speeding up and for gradually slowing down. So these are just a few of the indications that you might see on a piece of music, and they indicate how quickly or slowly a piece of music should be played. Now that we've learned some of these things, I am now going to just play a brief excerpt of a piece of music. So this is Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and I'm just going to play the introduction to this piece. And I want you to look and see if you can spot any of the things we've learned today. So even if that's dynamics, anything about the tempo, maybe a treble clef, any legato, rests, just keep an eye out and see if you can spot any of those things in the next piece of music.